Maddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I mean, personally, I'm super stoked to be working with such an iconic brand as Nosler. So yeah, I'm pumped about that, to say the least.
Yeah, it's been really good to have you on the team and representing us down there in Texas and your broad reach. So it's been great.
Yeah. So where are you joining us from?
We are in Bend, Oregon. So that's where Nosler's headquarters are. And Nosler's been here for many, many years. Originally started down in Southern Oregon and then moved to Bend. And we also have a facility in Redmond that's about 15 miles north of us, but our headquarters is here in Bend in Central Oregon.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful here.
Yeah, so I've never been to Bend. I've never been to Oregon for that matter. But my buddy has a cabin up there and he's always trying to get me to come trout fishing. So I've always like associated Bend more with like fishing culture.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
that's accurate. Yeah. So we have a big Mount Bachelor here, big ski resort. So lots of snowboarders, skiers, mountain town kind of. So we get a lot of outdoorsy people here, and the fishing's really good, especially for brown trout on the Deschutes. Lots of hiking, biking, all outdoor things here in Bend.
Deschutes. Okay, I'm familiar with the brewery. Now that's sticking out as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
We get some of that stuff down in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of history though. 75 plus years of history at
Yeah.
Nosler. Let's talk about John Nosler, the
Hmm.
founder. And there's an interesting story. Some people have heard it. I think my friend John McAdams of the Big Game Hunting podcast, I think he alluded to it one time when we were talking about different bullet constructions, and he was like, "Well, the partition came about because John Nosler was pissed that his bullets weren't performing on a moose, essentially,
Yep.
and so he, you know, came home and was like, I gotta find a better way." And he had shot this moose. I think it was in British Columbia in the late 1940s,
Yep, it was.
and he'd shot it like 7 times or something, and the thing wouldn't die. And we all know, as hunters, it's a terrible feeling when you shoot something and you don't put it down quickly.
Hmm.
And his claim was that the shots were good, and when he was butchering the animal, they looked good, but the bullets failed.
Yep. Yeah, the bullets failed to penetrate. The moose was mud caked and there was nothing to, you know, have create expansion when the bullet hit the animal. And then there was really the bullets back then were cup and core and there was nothing to create the expansion and then nothing to penetrate, keep that bullet moving through the moose. And so he ended up shooting it multiple times and that just didn't sit well with him. And he was an engineer at heart and a machinist. And so he kind of put pen to paper and was like, there has got to be a better way to do this. And that's when he came up with the partition.
Uh-huh. Well, and it wasn't a light caliber either. I read it was a 300 Holland, which is
Hmm.
very similar to our 300 Win Mag
Yep.
as far as performance. So he was shooting it with a large caliber and
Yeah.
not getting the results. So mad scientist, he comes home and he's like, okay, we're gonna figure out something better. And I think that was in like 46, and then he started selling the partition by 48, maybe
Yep.
something like that.
The partition bullet company, Nosler,
Uh-huh.
came about in 1948.
Okay. And just selling, did he have a storefront or just selling out of his garage, or what was the deal there?
It started in his garage. He was hand turning the bullets on a lathe, and they actually hand turned bullets for many, many years, and before they increased technology and started running them on better machines. But yeah, he was selling them out of his garage, and then they got a storefront. Um, at one point, he combined with Leupold and Stevens. So Leupold, the scope company, they had a part in Nosler to help with some of the funding, and then he bought the company back, and so now it still resides in the Nosler family. And we're actually on the third generation Nosler, who is also John Nosler. But
Uh-huh.
it was John A. Nosler that founded the company in 1948.
Okay. Yeah. So the company was sold to Loopold in the late 60s. They bought it back
Hmm.
in 1988. is what
Yep.
was what I saw on y'all's website. So what about the design of the partition? Just give us, a brief understanding of how it's, what the components and how it's designed compared to the traditional cup and core.
Yeah, so the partition is an impact extruded bullet. So what that means is instead of having a flat strip of copper that is essentially punched and the thickness of that copper, as in a cup and core bullet, the thickness of that copper is what is going to be your jacket. So that's as thick as the jacket can get. In an impact extruded bullet, we can change and manipulate the thickness of the bullet jacket. And so for the partition has, like in the name partition, it has an integral partition in the actual bullet. So it has a heavy lead core for the base, and then it has another partition where the jacket creates a divide between the two cores, and then a top core. And so John Nosler had thought, he thought of it like a truck and trailer. So you're driving truck, you have a really heavy trailer, you slam on the brakes, that trailer keeps pushing you. So that's essentially what he was thinking with that first and
Huh.
second core. He's like, okay, so when the first core the tip hits the animal, it creates the expansion, and that second core is going to drive it through the animal. And that's really what the partition does. It works really, really well. And Nosler is a really innovative company. We're constantly working up new designs and, kind of like working on what's next. But the cool thing about the partition is that its design is what all other hunting bullets have been based off of over the last 70 years. And it's still relevant today. So a lot of people are big fans of that bullet. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, is that still innovative? And it is. It's still very relevant, and it's still
Hmm.
a very effective hunting bullet.
So this was my 7th safari I went on in July, and my PH Carl and I have a pretty good rapport uh, by this point. And we're sighting in guns the first day, and he's like, "Oh, you finally 7th time you finally brought a real bullet." Yeah, so he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're finally a pro now." Yeah. So obviously, he loves the partition, and was tickled that I brought it. And then I took my 300 Win Mag, and I shot a zebra frontal at 180 yards off sticks. No problem. I mean, amazing penetration. I shot a red Lechway broadside, complete pass through both shoulders, devastating.
Mhm.
The guy, the tracker was skinning it. He asked me, "What bullet? This is impressive." Lechway's, I don't know, probably 250-pound animal, so
Mhm.
not a small thing. And then shot a kudu as well, my biggest kudu, and um, performance was great on that as well. And that was a 570-yard shot.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah. So I was, that was my first time using them actually in the field, and I was, they lived up to expectation, to say the least. What would you say is your go-to caliber and bullet choice for big game hunting? And you're gonna have to show us these mounts. You might have to move your computer, but
Oh,
you
these
got some
aren't
trophies to.
mine.
Oh, okay.
I wish all of them were mine, but this is in our conference room, so there's a
Okay.
lot of heads in here. Pretty
Uh-huh.
cool though. We do several hunting trips a year, and so a lot of times we'll get them mounted and bring them back to the
Uh,
office. But mine are in my actual office, not in the
yeah.
conference room.
Okay.
Um,
What do you
my
like to hunt
go-to,
with?
I really like the Accubond. I think that the performance of the Accubond and the partition are very similar. So the
Mhm.
Accubond is one of our most popular bullets. It has the white polymer tip. That's what it's known for looks wise,
Mhm.
and very similar performance. It's also impact extruded. It has a heavily tapered jacket at the base, so you're still getting that good penetration, good weight retention. But the thing about the Accubond is our proprietary bonding process that bonds the core to the jacket, and it makes it so there's no voids in that, where where they meet, and it allows for increased weight retention and penetration because you're not losing that core upon impact. So a lot of times you'll see bullets that aren't bonded when you shoot them. Sometimes you'll find the core separate from the jacket, or you'll find fragments. That doesn't happen with the Accubond. And I've had a ton of success with that bullet, and I'm kind of one of those people that if it's not broke, don't fix it. So
Oh yeah.
it works, and I really like it. As far as caliber, uh, one of my go-to for elk and deer is the 28 Nosler. So it's like a 7 rem mag on steroids, and has a lot of case capacity. That's my go-to.
Okay. And so when did the progression from the partition to ballistic tips take place for the company?
Oh, that was in the 70s. So Nosler had several different bullets. There was the partition, there's the Zepito. They had a few different generations of bullets along the way. And then in the 70s, they launched the solid base bullet, which was a very popular impact extruded bullet. It didn't have a polymer tip, really good performance out of that bullet. But at that time, no one really had a streamlined polymer tip. So that was kind of the next innovative thing to do. And so they had this solid base bullet, and they decided, what if we put a tip on this? And so that's what they did. And they only had capacity to really run a few bullets, a few different types of bullets in their manufacturing uh, facility at the time. So they decided to put aside the solid base bullet. They were still running the partition, but they knew they needed to come out with something else too. And they swapped that out for the ballistic tip, which was like the first streamlined polymer tip. And that got people really excited. And the ballistic tip is still very popular today, especially in the whitetail market. And that bullet is impact extruded, it has really good performance, but it's not bonded. And so what you get from the ballistic tip is a bullet that performs really well on thinner skinned game. So it has more rapid expansion up front, and it does really well on whitetail. I use it a lot on antelope every year. Yeah.
This is the 308 right here. Um, but yeah, so whitetail, pronghorn, stuff like that.
Coyotes. Yeah. We have
Coyotes.
a ballistic tip varmint, hunt a lot of coyotes with that.
So why polymer? I never thought to ask anybody this question. Like, is it because it's affordable, or I mean, I don't really know much about the material itself, but why did originally Nosler choose polymer to put on the tip?
So the polymer tip is a hard enough material to help create that expansion. So that's the first point of impact
Right.
on the animal, but it's so it pushes back into the tip of the bullet and helps create that expansion to get that mushroom. But it's hard enough that it's not going to deform in flight, deform in your mag, but it's also soft enough to help create that expansion.
Okay. Right on. Um, what about as far as your plans for this fall? What's on yours?
I
Draw any tags?
I did. So I've waited 16 years to draw this pronghorn tag that I have this year in Oregon. So I actually leave tomorrow.
Oh
So
wow.
by the time this airs, hopefully I have a good buck on the ground.
Heck
um,
yeah.
it starts on Saturday, and my dad grew up hunting the area that I'm going to be hunting. And so it's just kind of like sentimental. And he's drawn this tag twice before. And actually, he drew it this year. So we'll be hunting
Oh cool.
together. We didn't put in together, had no idea. He drew it on a random chance. So that's pretty exciting. And then my husband and I drew mountain goat tags in Kodiak.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's super cool. So
Yeah.
what is the process for that? I mean, is that just a random draw for each of them? Start with Oregon, and then we'll talk about the goats, because I don't know
Yeah.
anything about Oregon hunting culture.
So Oregon is on a point system,
Okay.
and it changes a little bit, but usually better units are obviously harder to draw.
Uh-huh.
The area I'll be hunting takes 16 points, and that's about the most it takes to draw an antelope tag in Oregon. You can draw antelope tags every few years or every 7 years, depending on where you want to hunt. And that's how it is for all of our big game species. There's what we call the big three for elk in the northeast corner of Oregon, and those take about 21 points. But our
Is that
our
for
OD,
Roosevelt?
no, that's for Rockies. So we have
Okay.
Roosevelt. If you were to like look at Oregon and you take probably the, I don't know, let's see, the west quarter of the state. Like if you were to draw a line from north to south, the west quarter along the Cascades. So we have Roosevelt on the west and we have Rockies on the east.
Okay.
And then that goes with blacktail and mule deer too. So we have blacktail on the west and whitetail and mule deer on the east.
I saw a Roosevelt bull in British Columbia, and I was on Vancouver Island bear hunting, and it was just eating somebody's plants in their yard. But I'd never seen an elk that big. I mean,
they have huge bodies.
Maybe 1,000 pounds.
Yes.
I've killed Rockies 600-700 pounds for a big bull. This thing was not twice that size, but close. I mean, it was over 1,000 pounds, just massive.
Yeah. I grew up in the northwest corner of Oregon hunting Roosevelt and blacktail deer, and I love it. Roosevelts are really neat. They have way different herd dynamics than Rockies, but yeah, they're big bodies. They tend to have smaller antlers. Up there in British Columbia, they get pretty dang big. Yeah. But in Oregon, they typically have smaller antlers just because the trees are so thick. The big timber on the coast range is so thick that their antlers naturally just don't grow as big because they're moving in and out of timber, and but they have big bodies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ones in BC. I mean, I asked how much they were, and then I was just like, oh my god, they were like getting $25,000-$30,000 for.
Oh my gosh.
An elk tag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Supply and demand. I don't have a problem with it. But I was like, no, that's not for me. Maybe I'll come to Oregon and get mine.
Yeah, you could come to Oregon. I have a few spots on the coast we could go.
So you drew the pronghorn tag with 16 points. So the trophy unit, I'm assuming, like, why else would it take so many?
Yep. So this will be my first pronghorn buck.
Okay. And then you and your husband are going mountain goat hunting.
Yep.
And so that is a random draw as well?
That one we put in with Cole Kramer in December, and I don't even know. We had a very small percentage of being able to draw. I think you can draw every like 4 years or so. We had no plans to draw this tag. And Cole texted me in February and was like, "You guys drew." I'm like, "Okay, I better start saving." But we're really excited. I feel like it's not necessarily once in a lifetime, but I feel like it's kind of once in a lifetime to me. It feels like, especially here in Oregon, the mountain goat and bighorn sheep tags are completely a random draw, and most people never draw them in their lifetime. So just growing up here, it's always been something that I aspired to do, but seemed unobtainable. So the opportunity to go to Kodiak is really neat. And especially with my husband too, I feel like it's not very often you both have tags to go after an animal like that in a place like that. And I've never been to Alaska either. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, that's incredible. And when is that?
That one is the first week of September.
Okay. I'm going in 26 to British Columbia for a mountain goat.
Oh,
but
wow.
Much like you said, it's probably a once in a lifetime thing. I didn't, draw. So, and I don't know what you're going to have to pay for the outfitter, but it wasn't cheap. To do that. And I think that's the most I'll have spent on a hunt, because, some of the other stuff I put in for, like every year, all of the completely, like the true random sheep draws I put in for.
Yeah.
I'm not trying. I'm going to be 80 years old by the time I actually have enough points to hunt. We'll just push me up the mountain in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
But so like New Mexico every year, I'm putting in That those sheep are completely random. But actually paying to go on a sheep hunt, I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
I could ever swing that. You
Yeah.
guys are young. You want to have kids someday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there goes your sheep hunt.
Yeah, I grew up hunting public land, and the way like my dad raised my brother and I feel like we always ground out the season and like hunted hard, and it was always on public. And so I feel so spoiled going on all of these company hunts, and now like paying to go on a hunt is very foreign to me. I still am like, I don't know about this, but there's just so many opportunities to hunt, and yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm excited, and especially
Yeah.
to go with someone like Cole. So
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't tell my wife how much the goat hunt was, but you know you can pay it in increments over the course. I think I booked
yes,
it in 22, and I'm not going till 26, so just squirreling away a little bit here and there.
yep,
Um, but so I love hunting public land out west. Archery elk hunting is I'm obsessed with it.
hmm,
Although this year I'm hunting in Texas during the rut, third week of September. Not even taking a bow. I'm taking a 300 Win Mag because I have gone 3 or 4 seasons in a row without killing a bull, and I'm pissed. So,
yeah,
and I've missed and I've wounded. The ugly truth about archery elk hunting is that that happens.
yep.
I got to help my buddy. We burned our Wyoming points 2 years ago, and he shot a. We ate lunch together, and then he was like, "All right, let's hunt separately for a while." I was like, "Cool." And then like 10 minutes later, he's like, "Bull down." And then
No,
I spent the next day and a half packing it out.
dang, yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard to beat archery elk hunting.
it
I
is.
mean, people always laugh when I say that because I work for a ammunition manufacturer, but
And we're
uh,
doing an interview on ammunition, but we're talking about archery elk
but
hunting.
archery elk hunting, I have never killed an elk with a rifle, only my bow.
Uh huh.
So it's hard to beat
How many of you killed with a bow?
too.
Me too. And I've missed probably twice that many, and I've wounded a big one. Shot him like just right above the vitals, and yeah. The my buddy was calling. He saw the elk turn and run. And you could see that I got great penetration. He's like, "Dude, you smoked him," and he's high fiving me. I was like, "That just looked a little high," and I shot him for 40, and he was 34 yards away. So just it's a game of inches with
It
bow hunting.
happens,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah.
Heartbreaking. I still think about it.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say those are the moments you never forget.
Yeah. So watch this September. I'll probably shoot one at 20 yards with a rifle. That's
Probably.
probably
I'm
how it
sure.
will
I feel
work
like
out.
that's always how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Where have you elk hunted then? Only in
Um,
Oregon?
Only in Oregon. Yeah. I shot a Roosevelt bull on the coast, and then I shot a Rocky here in Central Oregon a couple years ago.
Right on. Right
Yeah.
on. What would you say is at the top of your bucket list? And you could give me like up to 3 things, and you're probably checking one off with the goat hunt coming up here.
Mhm. At the top is New Zealand tar.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to shoot a zebra in Africa. I've never been to Africa, and growing up, like I'm a horse girl. Um, we ranch and
Uh-huh.
run cattle, and I grew up showing horses. And I always thought like I would never be able to shoot a zebra. But I don't know, like the last few years, my perspective on that has just changed. I think they're so pretty. I would just really want to hide.
Uh-huh. I've shot 3,
Yeah,
and I would shoot another one.
yeah. I think they're
The
really
first
neat.
one I shot, my buddy who doesn't hunt, his wife wanted wanted it for their house. She wanted a shoulder mounted zebra and put it in their house. They don't hunt. Like, I think he might do pheasant, like a little bit of pheasant. She just was like, this
Yeah.
would be really cool interior decorating. So I was like, sure, you can have the whole thing, and they paid for the taxidermy and they took it.
Yeah.
And then I shot one last year, or 2 years ago, which I turned into a rug. And then this one I just shot. Interesting conservation story. It's Cape Mountain zebra,
Okay.
which was hunted because it's the smallest zebra species. And if you see one when you do go to Africa and make that dream actually come true, its stripes go all the way down the leg. all the way to the hoof.
Okay.
Whereas like a Burchell's and a Hardman's, they kind of stop above the knee and
Uh-huh.
it's just white. And so these things in the early 1900s were almost hunted to extinction because of how pretty their capes were.
Oh, wow.
But ranchers and big landowners were like, we need to protect these things.
Mhm.
So they created a national park or like a park specifically for them on the Eastern Cape, and then started protecting them on their own properties. Now there's 8,000 of them, which is a lot,
Yeah.
right? And our stupid U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service won't let me import it. And we shot it knowing like, hey, there's hoops to jump through here, but we're going to try to put some pressure on them. And
Yeah.
John X Safari's made a great YouTube, which will be out here in probably a month or two. And we'll tell the story of this zebra and
Mhm.
why, because South Africa is exporting them to Germany, Spain, Mexico. Hunters from those countries can bring them back, but our government's like, we don't trust your data. Like, how just vain is that?
That's ridiculous.
Just
I think there's this
bureaucrats.
misconception here of hunting in Africa. They think it's like this rich man's like trophy
Hmm,
sport, but and in some cases that's true, but
sure.
they do a really good job of conservation and hunters contribute significantly to those conservation efforts.
Hmm. Yeah, if it wasn't for the hunting and ranching community, there wouldn't be 8,000 of those things
Mhm.
in South Africa. And Carl pointed out, he's like, if they would let us import them or export them to your country, 18 will go to 16,000 overnight, because
Yeah.
we'd all want them on our property. Right now, nobody wants them
Mhm.
because we can't. If it pays, it stays. It sounds so crass to put it like that, but it's the truth. Like, if you give
Yeah.
it a value, anti-hunters, do you want more zebra or less zebra? If you want
Mhm.
more, let us let hunters ethically take a couple hundred a year. And
Yes.
so,
Well, the number of
um,
species that hunters have helped bring back, I don't think people realize that we're the ones that really care about the animals.
yeah, but they can't wrap their mind around like the mental gymnastics of, well, if you love it, why do you kill it?
Yeah.
They can't suss that out in their minds. It's just like,
Uh-huh.
well, I don't always kill something. Most of the time, I don't. Most
Yeah.
of the time, the elk beats me,
Mhm. Yeah, seriously.
right? But
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, that's just gravy. We do it for the experience. We do it for
Mhm.
food. Um, and a trophy means something different to every person.
Yeah.
But they can't wrap their mind around that. The worst though is the anti-hunters that eat meat. That's the crew. I'm just like, so you're okay with
Mhm.
an animal dying, you're just not okay with me killing it.
Yeah, if only they knew how those animals that they're eating are living and dying.
I don't really think about it, nor do I care, to be honest. Like, I ate a hamburger last night after my
Yeah.
son's soccer practice. Whatever, could care less. Um, what has been your most memorable hunting experience so far?
Mm,
So you're about to make some great memories this fall, it sounds like.
yeah. I would say my first archery elk was definitely memorable. I picked up a bow right out of high school. I grew up rifle hunting and
Mm-hmm.
with my dad and my brother and picked up a bow and my dad had got a bow too and my dad is someone like he has to be very proficient with whatever he's using before he's ready to go shoot an animal with it. And I'd been shooting my bow all summer and I felt good. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to get an elk tag and I'm going to go hunt. And he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to sit this one out this year. I don't feel ready, but we'll go with you."
Mm-hmm.
So I hunted my ass off the whole season. We have a month long archery elk season here in Oregon, and I hunted over in Eastern Oregon, unsuccessful. Hunted over on the coast with my brother, unsuccessful. Very last day of the season, we're walking this old skid road on the coast range, and I go to like rip a bugle, and my dad's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This is how you call the elk. Like, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Why don't we just walk this roadside?" Because he was like a rifle hunter. He's like, "You walk as quietly as possible through the woods, or
Yeah.
you sit in glass and like." I'm like, Dad, that's not how you do this. I've
Right.
watched a lot of YouTube on this. I know what I'm doing. And so I was like, whatever, we'll walk this old skid road. There's lots of elk sign. We'll walk it quietly. Just I'll make you happy. And we get around this turn and the ridge takes up to our right and there's a pretty good trail going up it. And my dad stops. He's like, did you hear that? And we stop. I'm like, hear what? He's like, do you hear that stick break? And I'm like, no. Pretty soon a stick breaks again. I'm like, okay, I hear it now. And there was a herd of elk above the hill from us, and we had a pretty good cut bank. It was like 10 feet tall that we could kind of sneak around and get eyes on the elk. And there was a bull up there. He was at 80 some yards, just raking a tree. And it was super cool. Like, they had no idea we were there. Good wind. They were just feeding mid-morning, and we had cows at like 30 yards. But I would have happily shot a cow, except for this year, or this was the first year they had changed this unit to bull only tag. Otherwise, I would have happily smoked a cow. And my dad's like, hey, well, let's just wait and see if he'll feed down to us. And so we waited and waited, and sure enough, he started feeding down to us. And I had practiced out to 50 yards with my bow at that time, but I wasn't super confident out that far. I was like, I had pretty much set myself up to be like, okay, 40 yards and in, and I'll shoot something.
Yeah.
And he fed down, and the closest he got was 53 yards. And my dad's like, you think you can shoot him? And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, in that moment, I was so confident. And I ended up double lunging him. Wow. And he died in 20 yards. And it was just really cool to have my dad and brother there growing up hunting with them. Those are kind of always my favorite memories, is hunts with them. But as far as like the rest of my hunts go, I've gotten to go to really cool places. Like, Nosler just took me to Spain to hunt ibex this spring. I just hunted. That? It was incredible. Spain is beautiful.
I haven't been. It's on the list.
Yeah.
My red stag PH in Argentina this spring. He's from Spain.
Okay.
And his family moved to Argentina when he was in his teens. And so he does stag, water buffalo, black buck, all the stuff they have in Argentina in the springtime. And then he goes to Spain and does ibex and I guess maybe roe deer, stuff like that for half the year as well. I think he has dual citizenship.
When we were there, we hunted 3 different species or subspecies, I guess. We hunted the Gredos, the Ronda, and the Southeastern. And the Southeastern was my favorite.
But it's big,
sorry,
giant,
go ahead.
Full, curling back ibex.
They're all a little different, but yeah, they all have kind of a different shape.
Okay.
I think the big ones that roll all the way back are in Turkey.
Sure.
Yeah. But we were hunting big ibex, and the terrain is different in every area. It was really neat. Yeah.
And the
Spain
food
was pretty. The food was great. The people were so nice. The country is so clean. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. It was really cool.
So put Spain on the list.
Yeah, Spain is a good one. Yeah. Ibex are really neat animals.
Oh, so I mean, we have them in Texas.
Oh,
but that
true.
doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
I want to shoot one in the mountains.
Yeah, you want the full experience.
Yeah. You can draw. Actually, New Mexico has a great opportunity for ibex.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can draw a tag there. Limited draw, but okay. Have you hunted in Texas before?
Yeah, I've hunted whitetail in Texas, and I just went on an aoudad hunt down there in West Texas. We're in Marfa, outside of Marfa.
Right. Okay.
That's definitely up there with one of my favorite hunts.
Did you see any elk there?
Yes.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm going in September.
Okay.
Out that way.
Yeah.
So you shot a nice aoudad?
I shot a really nice one.
Yeah. And that's
awesome.
We call that poor man's sheep hunting here. Because you can, we just said like a sheep tag can be anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000, $60,000 depending on which species.
Yeah.
Aoudad, you can, the price has gone up significantly, but 4,500 bucks can have a real Western, spot and stalk in the mountain
Hmm.
style hunt for a pretty cool species that's native to Africa.
Yeah, I thought that was really neat. We do have some aoudad here in Oregon, in Central
Really?
Oregon. They were on a exotic game ranch
Uh huh.
and they got out and I actually shot a nice ram 4 years ago here in Oregon. But I just
Okay.
felt like, I don't know, Texas surprised me because I have hunted whitetail in Abilene,
Hmm.
and so I didn't really know what to expect from the rest of the state, but the mountains down outside of Marfa are so beautiful. I couldn't believe it. I really like to like glass and watch the
Mm.
animals, and there was just so much opportunity to really glass and get a good look at all of the rams and then stop put a stalk on, and it was kind of like everything I love in a hunting experience. So I thought that was really neat. And then the fact that you're up in like big sheep country
Yeah.
and yeah, and aoudad are really neat. I love their shaps.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. We have desert bighorn sheep out there in that part of the world as well.
Oh wow, I
And
didn't know that.
oh yeah, no, we you can hunt desert bighorn sheep in Texas. The state raffles off. We have a big time Texas hunts sweepstakes, and you get the four main like cervid species we have: desert bighorn, pronghorn, mule deer, and whitetail.
Okay.
And the state takes you on a guided one for each of those throughout the season. If you're there's one winner,
Yeah.
so that's one, and then we have one more that's just a sheep. It's a raffle, so you put in your 3, 5, $10 ticket or whatever,
Yeah.
and then the state donates one to an NGO every year to be auctioned off. Other than that, you have to. It's private landowner opportunity only, so pay to play. So
Wow.
there's yeah. So really, there's two you have a chance of winning.
Yeah.
I've never won, but yeah. But those
Maybe
aoudad
someday.
compete with the point was the aoudad compete for habitat, and so there's uh, between private landowners like the guy I'm going elk hunting with, he does 30-ish aoudad hunts a year. It's a lot of money,
Hmm.
and then the state comes in and shoots them out of a helicopter and smokes them. The aoudad, right? So, but the state's invested millions and millions of dollars in desert bighorn recovery and
Hmm.
restoration. So it's this catch 22 where an exotic species and a native, they're kind of butting heads. And the aoudad are
Yeah.
more aggressive, right? So that's
And they're so hardy. We have that same issue here with the bighorn sheep, and I mean the bighorns is you'll draw it maybe once in your lifetime if you're lucky,
mhm.
but they're just like kind of dumb.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
aoudad now, like 400 of them can blend into a hillside.
uh huh, yeah. So did you shoot it with the 28 Nosler?
I shot it with a 6.5 PRC.
Okay,
Mhm.
I just got one of those last year, and I've only shot one animal with it. It was a coos deer in Mexico, but I
Oh
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, I like the 6.5 PRC
yeah, it's a
for
good
sure.
one.
Uh huh. So what is the climate around hunting in Oregon? Like here in Texas, it's pretty, you know, everyone knows somebody that hunts.
Yeah,
Does Oregon, is there a negative stigma attached to hunters?
I wouldn't say that there's a negative stigma. I think political wise,
Uh-huh.
our state is pretty much run by Portland and Eugene,
Mm.
in that regard,
We've seen
and
Portland in the news the last 4 years.
so I feel like that gives us kind of a bad rap,
It
but
does because
when
I
you
used to want to come to Oregon, and then I saw that, and I was like, or
it's
or I wanted to go to
really
Portland. I was like, I heard Portland's this cool town, and kind of the same with Seattle and Washington. I wanted to go up there and like maybe go to
Mhm.
a Rangers Mariners game and eat
Yeah.
seafood and stuff. And like, no, I'm good. So
It's
tell me.
really sad because Portland used to be great. Like growing up, we would go downtown Portland as a family to go
Mm-hmm.
out to dinner every once in a while, and it was nice. But ever since COVID, it just has gone
Yeah.
majorly downhill. I hate even driving through Portland. But as far as everywhere else, hunting doesn't really have a bad stigma here. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people hunt, especially along the coast and east of the Cascades. Like pretty much the whole central and eastern parts of the states. Like, it's all ranching communities and hunting, and so I don't think it has a bad stigma. Just
Mm-hmm.
the political environment here isn't the best.
Yeah. Okay. And then what is the temperature of the firearms and ammunition industries heading into this November election cycle?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting on election years because obviously what we want the outcome to be,
Mm-hmm.
um, it it's almost opposite. Like on years when a Democrat gets into office, we see panic buying and uptick in sales. Like basically what happened during COVID, when people were like, hey, why can't we get NOSLER products? Where's all the NOSLER product? Are you going out of
Mm-hmm.
business? Like we just saw so much demand because of that panic buying, and people were so unsure about the political environment and just health in general and where our country was headed, that we started seeing a crazy demand, and we just couldn't keep up. And so we're always a little on edge around election years and election seasons because we have very drastic trajectories depending
Mm-hmm.
on who's in office. So right now, we're still business as usual, still pumping out products, but really what depending on who gets in office, it just changes the buying of our customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean that wasn't. You obviously mentioned Nosler couldn't keep up, but that was that was standard across all
Yes,
manufacturers. Like,
that was everything.
yeah. Um, what when you look at this current administration and their continued push to, I mean, make it's not a secret. They would love to make it where lead shot was banned on all wildlife refuges.
Mhm,
And I've talked to my friends over at Kent Cartridge. Now they're making shot shells, completely different. But they explain like we can't just flip a switch and just make everything non toxic overnight.
mm-mm,
And then but that's what they're pushing for. Deb Haaland, the National Wildlife Refuge System, all of the new refuges that Biden has um, put into effect in his administration, they're 100% non-toxic.
mhm.
So it's clear what the goal is, but it doesn't mean that we can just all of a sudden be like, okay, we're just non-toxic now. And so what would that be like? And it seems like it's very clear who the brunt of a decision like that would fall. It would be the consumer. You're gonna have to pay
Mhm.
more, and you're gonna have less opportunity to get it.
Yeah, so we do have a lead-free bullet. It's
Uh huh.
called our E-tip or exchange tip. It has actually really good performance, but just the overall, how do I say this? Our customer is does not want, in many cases, a lead-free bullet. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more so because of the policies that have been put in place. It's not because the performance is bad or they're completely against a lead-free bullet or that it
Yeah.
doesn't work. It's because they don't want to be forced to use a lead-free bullet. And I think it goes back to just, the policies that are being put in place. Do they really care about non-toxic hunting, or are they just trying to chip away at hunters in general?
That's it.
And they take, it's like they take an inch at a time and they get people's buy-in or whatever, and we conform, and then they go another step. And it's not that people are against lead-free hunting. I think we could probably all get on board that we don't want a toxic environment, right?
Sure.
But it's because of that political
Mm-hmm.
push that our consumers are more so against the
Yeah.
lead-free bullets.
Well, and I would also say if you had scientific data showing me that populations are being negatively affected by lead rifle ammunition, now I get it.
Yep.
Like it was affecting ducks. So what do? We switched. I'm all
Yeah.
for that. There's no science that says, white-tailed deer, bear, eagles, anything else is being affected on a population level. Now, if one animal and how the amount of lead that they would have to eat for it to be fatal, like if you shot a bear, left the part of the carcass in the field that you didn't pack out, and then a golden eagle landed on it and ate it. It would have to do that so many times for it to actually be fatal. But even if one animal did die, that's unfortunate, but that's not a population specific statistic.
Yep.
So it's really just the price of doing business. And I think that's also part of it, because like you said, we could all get on board with it if you could show me that it was an issue.
If
but it's
it
not.
made
They're
sense.
just trying to make it more cumbersome for us to enjoy our pastime.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to control.
I don't want to be told what to do, right?
No.
So here's the $1 million question. NOSLER is a great product. It's not a cheap product. There are cheaper options. Why spend more for a bullet?
There's a lot of reasons. One thing I really like to talk about is how much money we spend on gear and hunts and just the whole hunting landscape in general. We're spending a lot of money. Like, it is not cheap, right? And so
You know what I
to
did
then
yesterday? Let me interrupt just for 1 second. Yesterday I spent $500, me and my buddy, to build a pen to keep cattle off of our deer feeders. So that's just one example. That was just for hog panels and for T-posts. $500. I mean, like, and then you add up the fuel cost of driving to Oklahoma and the lease fee, and like you said, all the other gear, deer blinds, tree stands,
all the things
like, just don't tell my wife how much it really costs.
So whenever I get this question, I like to bring up exactly that. Like, look at how much you're spending to be successful. And then you're telling me you're going to skimp on the one thing that's standing between you and being successful. And it's like, that bullet is the one thing that you have to be able to rely on to put that animal down. Like, sure, there's a lot of other things that go into the success of the hunt and you getting to the point where you have that animal in range to shoot, but that bullet has to perform. And so with NOSLER, you're getting the quality and reassurance that bullet performs